in this report that will be okay, that will make sense as a press conference for him to have before the report is released?
I mean, the only thing he could say is the press conference is canceled. Ted Deutsch is absolutely right. This is an effort by the Attorney General to shape the narrative. He gave what was really a misleading 4-page summary. Now he's scheduled a press conference before anyone will have had a chance to read the report, to give a summary, apparently, so he can again begin to try to shape the narrative. It shows complete contempt for the truth, for the process, for the integrity of this report. And, you know, we should remember, President Trump said he wanted his own Roy Cohen. He thinks the Attorney General should defend and protect him, not the Constitution. He got his Roy Cohen with Mr. Barr. And when he auditioned for the job by doing that memo on his own that basically said you can't be charged with obstruction if you're the president. The president said, "You're my guy." He hired him, and he's delivered on that. And we should all be outraged. The press conference should be canceled. The report should be released. Reporters should have an opportunity to read it and study it, as well as members of Congress. And then Mr. Barr should answer questions.
Congressman Lieu, we now know why the Attorney General refused to answer the question both in the House and in the Senate. Does the White House know anything about the Mueller report? Have they been briefed in any way on the Mueller report? Reporting tonight indicates yes. The Attorney General and the Justice Department have been briefing the White House about the Mueller report.
Thank you, Lawrence, for your question. It's an honor to be on your show with Representatives Deutsch and Cicilline. Look, Bill Barr took one oath, and that was not to Donald Trump. It was the U.S. Constitution. He is not the PR firm for Donald Trump. His job is to serve the public, and to have his Justice Department coordinate with the White House and to give them a heads up about this report so that they can write a counter report is exactly the wrong thing to do. It's why we have a special counsel statute, actually regulation in the first place, to avoid coordination between the president's political appointee and the White House. Bill Barr should cancel tomorrow's presser, and he needs to really serve the public instead of serving Donald Trump in this really contemptible way.
Congressman Deutsch, the reason we have 3 judiciary members here tonight is that we know that all the focus tomorrow, most of the focus tomorrow, is going to be on the obstruction of justice passages. The Washington Post is reporting to us tonight that there's very little redaction in that area, and so you might get a very full view of what the special prosecutor saw in obstruction of justice. And you are the committee that has responsibility to consider the issue of impeachment. Is there a different bar in your mind, a different threshold to meet for proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a crime that the special prosecutor was looking for, or what an impeachment count would require in the House of Representatives for obstruction of justice by a president?
Sure there is, and it's not up to the Attorney General to tell us whether or not there was obstruction of justice. It's not up to the Attorney General to interpret this, particularly as Congressman Cicilline pointed out, that this is an Attorney General who got this job going in because it was his belief that the president could not be found guilty of obstruction of justice. So we know where he stands. It is our job now to study this report. It's up to the American people as well to look at this report. And if there was obstruction of justice, then it is this committee that makes the decision to show that no person in America, least of all the President of the United States, is above the law.
Let's listen to what the chairman of your committee said tonight about Robert Mueller testifying to your committee.
Very much, everybody.
Ask Mueller to testify?
I'll answer that. I assume we'll probably find it useful to ask Mueller to testify, and I assume we may ask members of his team to testify. But we'll have to make those decisions after reading what we get, as inadequate as that may be.
Congressman Cicilline, what will you be reading when you get your hands on that report sometime around noontime tomorrow?
Well, I blocked out the entire afternoon so I can read the entire report. Obviously, we've all been asking for the report to be furnished to the Judiciary Committee in an unredacted form, to not keep any secrets from us. We have the ability to look at classified materials in a classified setting. We ought to be able to see the entire report. You know, the Ken Starr is the most recent example. He turned over the entire report, including grand jury proceedings and 17 boxes of documents. He went to court to get permission to release the grand jury testimony without even being asked by Congress to do it. That's the sort of disclosure we should have, the sort of transparency that should be available. But I'm going to read the entire report, focus on, of course, the obstruction of justice issues, as well as the participation by the Russians in an attack on our democracy and the context with members of the Trump campaign. So I'm going to read it all, but we need to see the entire report and all the supporting documents. Mr. Barr should not be allowed to keep things secret from the Congress of the United States that has the responsibility, as Congressman Deutsch said, to make the final determination as to whether or not the president committed an offense worthy of removing him from office.
You all, as members of the Judiciary Committee, voted to give your chairman subpoena power for the Mueller report. Let's listen to what he said about that tonight.
Congressman, when do you plan to issue subpoenas for Mueller or anyone else for that matter?
Well, we'll have to take the time over the next couple of days to carefully read the redacted report so that we don't find out that, in fact, there's very little left out. But on the assumption that it's heavily redacted, we will most certainly issue the subpoenas in very short order.
Congressman Lieu, he has the subpoena power for witnesses, but also for the report. If you don't have the Mueller report, if the full report becomes a matter of protracted litigation, would you expect that Robert Mueller would be able to come to your committee and testify about the report without any restrictions, that he would not be restricted in his testimony by redactions made by the Attorney General?
I do, and if Mueller is concerned, we could also do it in closed hearing. I think it's important to note that there is a court case on this exact issue. During Watergate, Leon Jaworski completed his report, and then the White House cited the same exact rule of grand jury secrecy to try to suppress the report to Congress. Congress issued a subpoena, took it to the court, and the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled for Congress and said that the House Judiciary Committee is entitled to the full unredacted report. We believe that that same precedent holds here and that we will eventually get the full unredacted report.
Congressman Deutsch, you are the impeachment committee. You have known since the night the Democrats won the election that the burden of impeachment could easily fall to your committee because you've been watching this president from the start. We've never seen such reckless public behavior by a president. Richard Nixon, who got in such grave trouble he had to leave the presidency, did not have public behavior that was as out of control in any way as Donald Trump. Do you feel that you are now a big step closer to the possibility of considering impeachment?
Well, we're a big step closer to understanding what it is that the Mueller team has uncovered over the past 2 years. You're right. There is so much that has taken place in plain sight that is not just alarming, but that has to be viewed as a threat to our democracy, to our institutions, the regular attacks on the institutions of our government by this president. There is enough that we've seen already that will lead to a whole series of investigations and hearings that we're already moving forward on. But what's contained in this report, all of it, not what the Attorney General thinks we ought to see, but all of it will then set an additional course. The Attorney General of the United States has spent the past 3.5 weeks preventing this information from coming forward, covering up whatever's in that report. Now it looks like through the reliance on rules of secrecy, which should not stand in the way, he's going to attempt to further cover up what's in this report. We will get the truth, and we will use that to proceed in order to ensure that there's full accountability.
Congressman Cicilline, do you believe you can objectively read the findings of this report tomorrow?
Of course. And, you know, Lawrence, it's important to remember this is not about some personal indiscretion of the president. This investigation began because our democracy was attacked by a foreign adversary. This investigation was done on behalf of the American people. They paid for this investigation. They are entitled to see the results. And we have a responsibility to make sure that nobody is above the law and that we follow the truth, follow the facts wherever they lead us. So we can do it objectively. We take this responsibility seriously, but we have to have the information necessary to do our job.
We're going to have to take a break there. Congressman David Cicilline, Congressman Ted Lieu, Congressman Ted Deutsch, all members of the House Judiciary Committee, all will be facing the question of where does the investigation go from here after they finish reading this report tomorrow, and they uniquely, as a committee, have jurisdiction over the question of impeachment. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for starting us off tonight. This has been an